Greetings duelists and welcome to another video. So today was the reveal set of Rage of the Abyss. There was a live stream that happened and a lot of cards got revealed, and between those cards that got revealed, some of them were new Mimighoul cards. Since they have already been revealed from Konami's behalf, I kind of want to talk about them. The last time we profiled Mimighouls, we talked about the 7 cards that are here on the screen. We have 2 here in the graveyard, and we have the 4 monsters and the 1 field spell. And there was a really good wave of first support. But as always, when it comes to TCG exclusive sets, we have to be very skeptical on what is the next wave of support, because in the past we've already had 3 archetypes that did not perform well in the TCG after their next wave. So I am going to give a bit of a spoiler here. The support that was given to us is really good. Before I talk about the new support and what we ended up getting, let's talk about the stuff that Mimighoul got already at initial release. We had 2 starters, sort of. We had 1 starter / extender. We had 1 interruption. We have another consistency card that also works as a bit of a floodgate. And the most important part about all this is Mimighoul itself was already given an identity as an archetype. So what does the deck need in order to keep moving forward? I feel like even though we have a very solid game plan, we didn't have enough cards yet. We needed another wave of support. We needed more cards. It could have been more monsters. It could have been more spell cards. Boss monsters besides Mimighoul Master would have been like very ideal. And I think we got that and more. So let's talk about the new cards. Let's start with this one, Mimighoul Armor. So Mimighoul Armor reads: if it's the main phase, I apply these effects in sequence. Mimighoul monsters cannot be destroyed by battle. Give control of this card to your opponent. So that is the flip effect. During your main phase, you can special summon this card from your hand to your opponent's field to face down with her position. So the same effect as the other Mimighouls. Or if your opponent controls a monster, take note, it does not say face up. You can special summon this card face up on your field. You can only use each effect of Mimighoul Armor once per turn. So this card is pretty straightforward. It's pretty much a defensive card. The flip effect of this card is really not that good. However, there is a new gimmick out to this card compared to the other Mimighouls, and that is it can special summon itself to your side of the field. So basically this is an extender. Mimighouls don't have that many extenders to begin with, so just having a monster that can be summoned onto the board is kind of cool. After reading this, you already know that we probably must have boss monsters that work alongside this. But for the time being, I'd say this card is... I'm not gonna say mediocre, I'm gonna say it's decent at having a different identity, but it's not something that the deck really needed, outside of just it being another monster. Let's go to the next one. Let's go to this one. MLE Fairy. This card reads: if it's the main phase, apply these effects in sequence. This turn, you cannot activate the effect of monster special summon from the hand. Give control of this card to your opponent. That is the flip effect. During your main phase, you can special summon this card from your hand to your opponent's field in face down defense position, or if you control a Mimighoul monster, you can special summon this card face up to your field. You can only use your effect once per turn. Again, this is the same thing as the armor. This is just another extender. So now we're having this theme of just having monsters that can both be special summoned to your opponent's side as well as your side of the field. So I like that because we have this gimmick of having monsters that just worked upon just being summoned or worked upon just being on the field. Now we're getting monsters that work around just summoning themselves. So it's very unsure how many copies of each you're gonna play. Fairy is a little bit stronger than the armor, solely due to the fact that she gives a more useful effect upon being flipped. But outside of that, it's just the same thing as warrior, as the armor. Let's go to the next one. Mimighoul Slime. If it's the main phase, I play one of these effects in sequence. Your opponent can special summon one Mimighoul monster from their deck to their field. Give control of this card to your opponent. During your main phase, you can special summon this card from your hand to your opponent's field. Or if your opponent controls more monsters than you do, you can special summon this card face up to your field. You can only use this effect to Slime once per turn. This is the best one out of all three. Not only does it have an amazing flip effect, because this flip effect is actually really strong, but it's also an extender as well. Its extender conditions are a little bit different from the other Mimighouls. However, from what this card does, it more than makes up for it. I also like the fact that all of these monsters are different types. Like, there can be only one works with this deck, Ghost and Match works with this deck. This being an aqua monster means maybe potential for T elements, who knows. Very soon to tell. But for now, I'd say, yeah, this is the best one. I really like this gimmick that these monsters have. Obviously, this is not a standalone card. Mimighoul needs multiple cards to function. However, if you read Mimighoul Maker, remember that we used to use Mimighoul Maker to summon Dragon and Archfiend. Now you can Mimighoul Maker for Dragon and Slime. And if you have like anything that can just flip the monster, you just have enough plays going. Especially like you go Slime special Dragon. Dragon can like add you something, and just keep going from there. So now that we know about the monsters, let's go with the spell cards. We do have two of them. You're probably already familiar with this card. This is Mimighoul Charm. This card reads, once per chain during the main phase, if a Mimighoul monster your opponent controls is flipped face up, you can randomly choose one face down card in your opponent's extra deck, and if it's a monster, it can be special summon to your field. If it wasn't, or could not be special summoned, banish it. I don't like this card because it's not a starter, it's not an extender. It's basically well, you can say it's a situational extender. It does fit all around with your opponent's extra deck. I don't think this card really works that well with the deck. However, this deck does not lack starters, this deck does not lack extenders. Like, we got 3 extenders here. So, I'd say in terms of card design, this card is alright. I would say it's probably a 1 or a 0 of. Not the strongest card, however, just being able to like pick apart your opponent's extra deck is actually kind of cool. It is sad that you can it is random, so you don't get to pick. However, some strategies just can't do well if you just take out cards from their extra deck, and this card is really good for that. Let's go for the next spell card. This is Mimighoul Fork. So Mimighoul Fork reads, target one face down monster your opponent controls. Your opponent chooses one of the following effects. Either switch it face up, or give the owner of the monster, take note it says owner, not controller, also send it to a graveyard, and then they draw 2 cards. So this card is really good. It does have a graveyard effect, so let me end up reading the other one. You can banish this card from your graveyard, add to your hand 1 Mimighoul Fork from your deck. You can only use each effect once per turn. So this card is really good because now you have a searchable card that fiddles around your opponent's set monsters, Mimighoul monsters, without relying on Archfiend or Master or the Spell and Traps. I mean, the other Spell and Traps. Because that is something that the deck needed. setting monsters face down is not an issue for the deck. Flipping them face up is part of issue that the deck has, and this card is very good for that. The fact that you can just banish it and just add another one is also like extra pluses. This card is heavily searchable within the archetype, so more likely than not, your opponent is probably going to give you 2 cards. They're not going to flip the monster, especially if you get them slime. Like your opponent will rather give you 2 cards than just like make slime resolve. Sadly, this card can get Ash Blossomed. That is one thing to take note of. But yeah, I think this card's fantastic. It's not a real starter. It relies on a Mimighoul. However, you have so many Mimighouls to work with and so many ways to get to them that I don't think the trigger conditions for this card is going to be hard at all. So now that we looked at the main deck, or at least the main 5 cards, let's look at some extra deck monsters. Yes, this deck received 2 extra deck monsters. The first extra deck monster is Mimighoul Throne, and this card reads, detach one material from this card, special summon one Mimighoul Master from your hand, deck, or graveyard. During the main phase, you can target one Mimighoul Master you control, equip this card as an equip spell, then you can return cards from the field to the hand up to the number of materials this card had. You can only use one Mimighoul Throne once per turn. So, this card's fantastic. Not only does it get to summon Master from the deck, and Master summoning from the deck is big because this is one of the only cards that can flip your opponent's monsters. It's also interruption on your opponent's turn alongside the Mimighoul Master. Another thing is, if you already control Mimighoul Master, you can just not detach with this card and just use this card to equip to Master as a material, and then just bounce 2 of your opponent's card. And not only that, it bounces cards without targeting, and it can banish and it can bounce from any side of the field. So this is really good in the sense where you can dodge stuff like Evenly Matched. You can dodge other cards like Impermanent stuff. You can play around your opponent's cards as well. Let's say, for example, you're playing against Tempai Dragons and your opponent just wants to synchro summon. This card not being able to target is huge because it means that whenever your opponent tries to go for that synchro line, you can just disrupt them on the spot and they cannot just chain to synchro summon. That's just one of the many examples I can give. Yeah, this card is really good. It asks for 2 Mimighoul monsters, 2 level 1 Mimighoul monsters, but we have a lot of extenders. So now it's really not that hard to get to a card like this. And this just being able to summon Master being able to just add another guy. You can realistically make this card without your normal summon too. Yeah, really good card. Let's go for the last one. This is Giant Mimighoul. So it asks for 2 level 1 monsters, so it's completely generic. Snake Eyes. Your non-XYZ Mimighoul monsters can attack directly while your opponent controls a face down monster. So now you have a win condition in this deck with the Mimighoul Dungeon. Because take note, with the dungeon, all your Mimighoul monsters will become big. Like they'll become like really good attack and defense. The newer ones don't have a lot of attack and defense. However, like the older ones do. And this one also can become like 3300. So that's a really big deal. You can only use the following effect once per turn. If this card is XYZ summoned, you can add 1 Mimighoul card further to your hand. So, fantastic card. Like, the deck didn't need more consistency. This just is another consistency booster. You can detach 1 material from this card, then target face-up cards on the field up to the number of face-down monsters your opponent controls. Destroy them, and if you do, inflict 1000 damage to your opponent for each card destroyed. This is a really offensive card. This card is pretty much used as a finisher. It is a starter because you can add any Mimighoul. Like, there's really no downsides to this card at all. The fact that it asks for 2 level 1 monsters is also really big because, again, I already mentioned Snake Eyes, but you can pair this up with other level 1 archetypes. Lyrilusk is another example of this. Like, yeah, the possibilities are just tied to just whatever you can use to summon this card. And I feel like we have enough starters and extenders in this deck to just have like a play going. So yeah, what are my ending thoughts on this archetype? I think this archetype is now really good. I don't think it's like a top 3 deck contender yet. However, this is a deck that does not summon from the deck or extra deck a lot, so you don't have to worry about Fuaras, which is a really big advantage from for this deck, since we know Fuaras is gonna be everywhere. This is an entire Earth attribute archetype, so sadly it cannot play Dominus Impulse, but it can play Dominus Purge, which is something really cool. There's a lot of other themed, Earth-themed cards like Naturias and other stuff like that that you can play alongside these. Yeah, honestly, I'm impressed. If this is the route they're taking with Mimighouls, I'm here for it. Like, I'm actually excited for this archetype. I'm excited for the TCG release of Rage of the Abyss. Yeah, let's see what happens. Keep practicing and keep dueling.